Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League, from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered, from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
All right, everybody, and welcome back in to the GSMC Baseball Podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Kenny, and today we're going to be getting into some pretty interesting topics. It's baseball. Baseball is back, and I can't be more excited. I am so very, very happy about baseball coming back, and from now for the next 8 months or so, baseball is going to be on, and I know that anybody listening to this podcast obviously consumes baseball at a very, very high rate, and you have to be excited as well. Now, the first thing that we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about Major League Baseball's power rankings. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a tier list on where I think the teams should actually be instead of maybe a ranking. Then we're going to get into what teams have everything on the line this year. Fernando Tatis' new contract. It was a 14-year, $340 million signing extension with a $10 million signing bonus. And then in the last part of the show today, we're going to discuss the Cleveland Indians starting to get a new name change. We're going to go over different options. We're going to see what nickname is going to be leading the new nicknames, or is leading at the moment by the fans' perspective. It's Guardians or Arsenals or Spiders. That's what some people are thinking. Now, let's get right into it. So, Major League Baseball's preseason power rankings came out, and I'm just going to list them off to you guys from 30 all the way up to 1. And at number 30, it's the Pittsburgh Pirates, 29, the Colorado Rockies, the Orioles, the Rangers, the Tigers, Diamondbacks, Mariners, Royals, Giants, and Marlins, and then the Reds fill out the bottom third, and then the Red Sox get it started at 19. Number 18 is the Phillies. Number 17, the Los Angeles Angels. Number 16, the Chicago Cubs. Number 15, the Cleveland Indians. Number 14, the Washington Nationals. At number 13, it's the Milwaukee Brewers. Number 12, the Oakland Athletics. At number 11, the St. Louis Cardinals. At number 10, the Houston Astros. Number 9, the Rays. Number 8, the Blue Jays. Number 7, the Twins. And number 6, the White Sox. And in the top 5, it is National League heavy all the way, and these are Major League Baseball's power rankings. We'll get into a little bit of my tier list a little bit down the road, but at number 5, they have the New York Mets, which I think is an interesting choice. I think that's a little bit lower than I would have put them. I'm pretty high on the Mets, but I can understand why they have them as low as they do. Mostly just because they're sort of unproven, and last season they had a lot of offensive failures, for lack of a better word. And because of the lack of offensive production, it is going to be interesting to see how the Mets are going to be able to dominate or get through this just absolutely tough National League this season. At number 4, it's the Atlanta Braves. The Atlanta Braves are so fantastic. They're so young. They have all of the promise in the world until some of these guys hit arbitration or free agency, and then out goes the chance to really do something special. So I would say that the Braves are a good spot at number 4. Now, number 3, I don't necessarily love MLB's choice at this. I feel like they just kind of threw the Yankees into this number 3 spot right here. While I do think the Yankees right now on paper are the best team in the American League, I don't necessarily see them winning the World Series. I think it's gonna come down to somebody in whoever makes it out of the National League. Honestly, I know that the Yankees signed a few really good pieces, Corey Kluber being one of those pieces, and they have a really nice core. But at the same time, I don't think that the Yankees are even the best team in New York at this point. I don't think that they can compete with the starting pitching that the Mets has. And so they basically just have to out-hit everybody. And while Major League Baseball has changed their actual baseball, so it's not as aerodynamic or whatever, and so home runs aren't going to be as big of a part of the Yankees lineup this year, or at least it shouldn't be. That's the hope from Major League Baseball, and the Twins are in that aspect as well. And then at number 2, there is the San Diego Padres, and I agree with this choice. I think the Padres got strong this offseason. They got a bunch of arms, and I think that the Padres are going to be a very good team, if not the biggest contender to win multiple World Series over the next few years, just because of the team that they have. And then, obviously, at number 1 is the reigning champions, the Los Angeles Dodgers. And that's an obvious choice. I mean, they had a great season last year, retained almost everybody except for not re-signing Justin Turner, yet they still want to. We'll see if they can get a deal done together. But they also added Trevor Bauer. Now, the Trevor Bauer signing is absolutely fantastic for them. I don't know if the Dodgers would be looked at as highly right now without Trevor Bauer. I think obviously they would still be the favorites to repeat just because they won last year and retained most of their team. But at the same time, I don't know if Trevor Bauer is going to be what he was last season in Cincinnati. But let's get into my tier list right now. So I have it into a S, A, B, C, D, and F tier. And the F tier is teams that are rebuilding right now. They're rebuilding this season, and they're probably going to be rebuilding for a while. Now, in this, I have the Pirates, Rockies, Orioles, and Rangers. I just don't see anybody in their farm system. They don't have a lot of top prospects coming. It's not looking great for their future as of right now, so it's going to be a few years for these teams. If you are a fan of one of these teams, it's going to be a rough couple years, and it's never fun watching your team rebuild. But I do think that the Rangers could potentially, ruffle up some feathers and win a few games here and there. But they're not the team of a few years ago where they were competing for the AL West. And I don't necessarily see a lot coming out of the AL West this year. I mean, the Astros are still going to be good, but the Rangers and the Orioles and Rockies and Pirates are definitely in rebuild mode, and they are going to probably buy up a lot of players at the trade deadline or on the waiver wire toward the end of the year, so that way they can get a few extra draft picks in upcoming drafts. Now, in the D tier list, we have teams that are in rebuild mode. They are in the process of getting better, and if they continue in the right trajectory, they could be going to the playoffs within a couple of years. And those teams are the Tigers, the D-backs, the Mariners, the Royals, and the Giants. Now, the Giants and the Royals, I would say, could potentially be a C-level tier where they make the division a little interesting. But I think, for the most part, that these teams are definitely just working on building their program to where they want it to be, to World Series contender level. But again, with these two tiers, it's going to be a while, I think, before they get there. Now we're going to go up to my C tier list, and these are the teams that I think could make the division that they're in pretty interesting. If they win a few games here and there, if they get on a hot streak, they could potentially make the playoffs. And these teams are the Red Sox, Marlins, Angels, Reds, and Cubs. And I have all of these teams in here because nobody is really expecting anything from any of these teams. They're not the bright, shiny new toys that the Padres and the Mets are. And while the Cubs, Reds, and Marlins did make the playoffs last year, it was a short season and an expanded playoffs, and I think all three of those teams, the Cubs, Reds, and Marlins, sort of lucked into a playoff spot last season. Now, the Angels and Red Sox are a little bit different here because I think the Red Sox could potentially make a wild card spot if their pitching stays healthy. And that was the biggest issue last year. As everybody probably remembers, Chris Sale went down early in spring training, and then the Red Sox just kind of realized that they didn't really have a shot at making anything interesting, and it was just not a fun year for Red Sox fans. I also have the Angels in here because the Angels did make some moves this offseason. They added Dexter Fowler and Jose Iglesias, as well as for those four defensive and their defensive positioning and bats. Jose Iglesias is obviously going to take the place of Aldernon Simmons, who moved to the Twins. And Dexter Fowler is going to give the Angels a little bit of outfield help. But they also added Jose Quintana and Alex Cobb to their rotation. And while these names are names that you might recognize, they've been in the league for a while, but they're not guys that are of a Trevor Bauer or a Jacob deGrom or Shane Bieber, or the list goes on. These are guys that are going to service the middle to back half of your pitching rotation, maybe even a reliever role. And Mike Trout's prime isn't necessarily ending anytime soon, but at the same time is running out for the Angels to actually make something happen with this guy. He's arguably the greatest baseball player people have ever seen, and he doesn't have a playoff win to his belt. And obviously, baseball is the ultimate team sport, and nobody is actually going to really try and diminish how good Mike Trout is because of that. But I think that these teams, specifically in the C tier, the Cubs, Reds, Angels, Marlins, and Red Sox, I think they have a real shot at stirring up something in the division. And that's probably not going to be a division win for some of them, if any of them. But at the same time, if they get hot or they have a rookie come out of nowhere and he is having the hottest season of all time and somehow gets them over there, I wouldn't be surprised if these teams get hot at the right time that they could make a run at the playoffs. And moving up, we're going to the B tier list. And these are teams that could be buyers or sellers at the trade deadline. And these teams are the Stros, the Nationals, Indians, Brewers, Athletics, and Phillies. Now, the Phillies could probably move up into the A tier, but I think all of these teams have something to prove. I think that they're all good enough to be playoff teams if they end up winning enough games and when they hit losing streaks, which is going to happen in baseball. When they hit these losing streaks, they don't fall off and stop winning for a month. It's just going to depend on how these guys actually come out and play right out of the gate. For these teams right here, I think that everything that they do is going to depend on, at the trade deadline and for the rest of the season, is going to depend on how they start. Now, the Dodgers and Padres and Mets maybe have a little bit more time to get off to a slow start, but I don't think that these teams have that luxury time. Just because I think that they might be just a little bit behind the other teams. Now, moving into the A tier list, or the A list, I think that these teams are probably pretenders, if we're going to be honest. But that doesn't mean baseball can't happen and things may not, turn out a different way. But right now, I don't see any of these teams, with the exception of one team, even making it a competitive World Series versus some of the teams in this S tier. Now, in this A tier, I have the Cardinals, White Sox, Rays, Twins, and Yankees. The Cardinals are always going to be competitive. They almost always are. They figure out a way somehow. And that's just, kudos to their whole organization for even to be that good for so long. It's astounding, honestly. But you also have the White Sox and the Twins in here. And these two teams are likely going to be fighting out for the AL Central, but the Indians are also still in that division. And that's not easy games for either of these teams. I think the White Sox are really, really fun, but how is Tony La Russa going to mesh with these young guys that are all about letting the players play and bat flips and showing emotion? And Tony La Russa sorta is, without a doubt, 100% old baseball. He doesn't like the bat flips. He doesn't like all that stuff. So is that going to hold him back? And are the Twins going to be the real deal? Do they have enough in their back pocket to win a playoff game? And we'll get into the White Sox and the Twins more later. But another team that I wanted to talk about was in this tier is the Rays and the Yankees. Now, both of these teams are very good. The Rays obviously made it to the World Series last year, and the Yankees are consistently one of the best teams in baseball. You definitely can't count them out. But with the loss of Blake Snell to the Padres, for the Rays obviously taking a step back in that aspect, but at the same time they might not get out of there. They might be the real deal, but the Yankees might also be the real deal. I think that the Yankees or the the Yankees or the Rays, whoever comes out of that division as the division champion, I think has the best chance of making the World Series out of the AL. Now, in the S tier, these are the contenders and the teams that are probably going to be the most fun to watch, and that's the Dodgers, Padres, Mets, and the Braves. All of these teams are very young. They all have excellent pitching staffs. They're fun to watch. And if one or two teams here make a couple moves and they get a few extra guys that end up making a difference, it could be the difference that pushes them ahead of the other one. Now, for right now, I don't know if any of these teams specifically is the number one contender. I mean, the Dodgers are the betting favorite in Vegas, but the Padres and the Mets are also really good, and the Braves are definitely contenders as well. Only time is really going to tell what is going to happen. Now, coming up next, we're going to go over some of these teams that have everything to lose this season. And then we're going to go over Tatis's new deal. And then what should the Indians name their new team after this season? And that's all coming up in just a moment.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Welcome back, everybody. Now, in this segment, we're going to be talking about basically what teams are primed for either having to blow everything up that they've worked so hard the past few seasons for, or are they going to be able to push through? These teams have literally everything that they've been working on the line this season, and there are a couple teams that I didn't. There are a few teams that I didn't put in this segment, like the Cleveland Indians and the Milwaukee Brewers, but those teams are also part of the teams that are going to try and have to sort of rebuild or basically make a few moves and just to be really competitive. But the first team I want to get into is the Los Angeles Angels. Now, Mike Trout is one of the greatest, if not the greatest baseball player of all time. And because of how good he is, he signed a massive deal. I believe it was prior to last season. But Mike Trout is only 29. He does turn 30 this season. And they have made some off-season moves like adding Dexter Fowler and Jose Iglesias, Jose Quintana, and Alex Cobb. But is it enough for the Angels to actually do anything in the AL West? Are they going to be able to get over the hump that is the Houston Astros? And because of how good the Astros have been, it's sort of limited the Angels' opportunities the past few seasons, and the Angels have had a couple decent teams, but because of how baseball works, it hasn't been smooth sailing for the Angels, to say the least. Now, the next team I want to talk about is the Minnesota Twins. And they're probably going to win the AL Central, but they haven't won a playoff game in 18 outings. So it's almost as if they should just kind of get out of the way almost. It's like the Twins are a really good regular season team. They have been, and it's, I believe, the longest streak in baseball right now, longest time without a playoff victory. And now the Twins do usually pull the harder of the two division winners when they do end up making the playoffs and winning, or the team that they just don't necessarily match up well against. And that's not necessarily their fault, but I don't know if them losing a bullpen piece like Trevor May to the Mets and then adding a defensive shortstop with Algernon Simmons, I don't know how that is all going to play out. But I do think that the Twins are still the best team in the AL Central. I don't think that they lost too many pieces compared to the Indians. The Indians obviously lost Francisco Lindor and Carlos Carrasco, and they got some nice prospects back in return, but those prospects aren't necessarily going to be ready to go right now. So I think that the Twins are going to be likely the division champions, but the White Sox as well are very talented. They're so young, but they do have a new manager in Tony La Russa, and he's an old school manager. Is he going to buy into the newer style of play where it's analytics, or is he going to go with a more traditional manager type of a role? I don't necessarily see him getting too into the analytic aspect of it. So I don't know if he's going to be able to let the players that he has flourish, like a Tim Anderson, who is all about having fun playing baseball. And it's fun to watch him have fun playing baseball. And it's, I wonder how these two egos are going to clash. And we know La Russa has an ego. He was arrested briefly, or for right before, I believe, he was announced as the new White Sox manager. And in his basically he ended up saying something along the lines to the officer that was, "Do you know who I am? I'm really big in baseball." Like, he definitely has an ego. I think it's fair to say that Tim Anderson has an ego, but it's okay for Tim Anderson and him to have an ego. It's just going to be more of, is it going to be a power struggle, or is it going to be a good relationship between the two? And because of, I think, just who Tony La Russa is and who Tim Anderson and some of the other athletes that they have on the White Sox, I don't know if Tim Anderson and his counterparts are going to be able to necessarily play for him instead of play despite La Russa. Now, the next team I want to get into is the Washington Nationals. And the Nationals have some really good bright spots with Trey Turner and Juan Soto, and they also signed Kyle Schwarber in this offseason, but they are getting old. Let's not try and hide the fact that these pitchers, albeit when they're on, they are on, and they're fantastic, and when they can stay healthy, they're so good, and it brought them to a World Series championship. But the biggest question I have for them is, can they stay healthy or as dominant as they have been. Max Scherzer's getting up there in age, so is Steven Strasburg, Patrick Corbin, John Lester is as well. And that's their top 4 pitchers with Max Scherzer, Strasburg, Corbin, and Lester. And for the rest of the team, other than, some bullpen guys and, of course, Juan Soto and Luis Garcia, they don't necessarily have a young team. Luis Garcia was born in 2000, and Juan Soto was born in 1998. And Trey Turner's still pretty young. He was born in 93. But for the most part, the rest of their team is fairly old. Like, their catchers are Yan Gomes and Alex Avila, who feel like have been in the league for forever, with Yan Gomes having a very nice career with the Indians, and Alex Avila bouncing around a little bit before getting traded from the Detroit Tigers by his dad, which is funny in and of itself, but that's a story for a different day. I guess the question that I have for the Nationals is, are they talented and young enough to get off to the cold start that they've had for the last 2 seasons? And this last season they weren't able to turn it around with the short season, obviously shorted because of COVID. But the year before they were able to turn around, got into the playoffs and made it to the World Series and ended up winning the whole thing. And it's because of how good this team is. But is it more because of they were all at the end of their prime, or some of their pitchers past their prime? These are questions that you do have to kind of look at. You have to see who is still up there and still putting up numbers. And Max Scherzer, when he's healthy, absolutely is still one of the best pitchers in the league. Steven Strasburg, if he's on the field, he is absolutely one of the best pitchers in baseball as well. He might even be better than Max Scherzer, but Max Scherzer, I think, is a little bit more consistent staying healthy than Steven Strasburg. But you also have Patrick Corbin and John Lester, who are both getting up there in age. And it's not necessarily the fault of the Nationals organization because they are getting old, but they had a good team for a very long time. And because of how long they've been dominant, or competitive at least, I would say, in the NL, that it might be time to end their run. They have a shot at doing something this year, but they're playing in a very tough division with the Braves and the Phillies. It's going to be very interesting, to say the absolute least, to see if they can come up with any answer to the Braves and or the Phillies, or heck, even the Marlins. The Marlins ended up having a very surprising season last year, and if they're able to pick up and build from what they left off from the last season, I think that they might even be better than the Nationals this year. But I don't know if it's going to be better if they were to blow it up now and trade some of these pieces away, like a Max Scherzer or a Patrick Corbin. And they did just recently, I believe a few years ago, sign Strasburg to a decent extension. And it might be time to get rid of Strasburg and get a lot of different pieces back to build that farm system up again, and then use those pieces to rebuild or reload instead of rebuild, and just take a year or two off where you're not that competitive, and that's okay. You have some guys that are really young still and have a lot of talent. And the next team I want to talk about is the Phillies. Now, the Phillies did lose Jake Arrieta back to the Cubs in this offseason, but they don't necessarily have, just the best pitchers in baseball. They do have Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola, but other than that, they don't necessarily have a third guy or somebody to anchor that rotation. And they have a really good bullpen with Archie Bradley closing the door and some other really good arms coming out of the pen. And they just signed JT Realmuto. And they have an absurd amount of talent right now on their roster, with Gene Segura and Didi Gregorius battling out for shortstop, or Gene Segura going over to third base, and Rhys Hopkins at first, and Andrew McCutchen in left, and Bryce Harper in right field. This team is loaded with talent. But can they get over the hump? Can they make the playoffs? Can they beat out the Braves, who have been young, but it feels like the Braves have more experience than the Phillies, when the Phillies have arguably just as much, if not more, talent at their disposal. I do think that the Phillies are going to need to make some moves on the mound, and if the Nationals are just kind of meh in the first half of the season before the trade deadline, the Phillies might have to trade for a John Lester or a Patrick Corbin. I don't know if they could necessarily get a Max Scherzer or a Steven Strasburg from them, but I think that the Phillies right now are missing some starting pitching. They could use a little bit of bullpen depth, but I think that the Phillies, out of every team on this list, I think that the Phillies are probably the closest, even more so than the Twins or the White Sox, to get to that next step. I think that might be because I think maybe the Twins are already at that next step where they're already a playoff team. But I think for the Phillies right here in this season of hopefully a season where no games are canceled or postponed due to COVID and all of that, hopefully the Phillies are going to be the team that gets through gets over the hump. And I know that I love to watch all of this National League Baseball this year, just because of how much talent there is out in both the coast divisions. You have the NL East with the Mets and the Marlins and the Braves and the Nationals. And then out west you have the Dodgers and the Padres, and it's just going to be such fun baseball to watch. But can the Phillies or the Nationals climb into that wild card spot? I don't know if the Braves are going to be able to beat out the Mets for the division championship, but that's why baseball isn't played on this podcast. It's played out on the field, and you have to let the players decide, really. And because of that, you just have to kind of end up wondering which one of these 5 teams that I listed is going to, I wouldn't say surprise us, but prove people wrong that they aren't there. They're going to prove people wrong and end up just with the best record in baseball or something of that nature, where they don't have to worry about people saying that, oh, these guys aren't good. And I mean, obviously, all of these teams are very good. They're professional baseball players, and that's not what I mean by that. What I mean is that they're not at the competitive level of the S tier that I talked about back in the last segment. Are they on the Dodgers or Padres level, or the Mets or the Mets level? Or are they more of a Yankee caliber or a Rays caliber team? And I think that these teams are going to be very good, and anything can happen. And who knows? Didi Gregorius may have an MVP level season that brings them up to where they need to be. But don't go anywhere. We're going to have a short little commercial break here coming up in a second. And then right after that, we're going to get into Fernando Tatis' new deal, see how that affects the Padres' future. And we're going to talk about and see if the Padres, or how long the Padres can be competitive with over $600 million tied up between Manny Machado and Fernando Tatis Jr. And after that, we're going to go over the Cleveland Indians name changes and see what names sound the best, what names I don't like, and we'll get into all that in just a few minutes.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
And welcome back, everybody, to the third segment of today's Wednesday, February 24th episode. Right now, here, we're going to be discussing Fernando Tatis Jr.'s 14-year, $340 million extension. And he also signed a $10 million signing bonus, so I'm going to break down his contract a little bit, and then we're just going to see how long that I think that the Padres are gearing up for a long run. And I do think it is a long run. I don't love this deal if you're Tatis, just because I think he could have gotten more money. But at the same time, I think that if you're the Padres, that this is a great deal. You're locking up your franchise player for at least the next 14, 15 years. And then you're getting somebody who could be the face of Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball tried to have Bryce Harper and Mike Trout be the faces of baseball, and neither of those guys really worked out in that aspect. And unfortunately for Major League Baseball, it's having sort of an identity problem. It feels like baseball doesn't know which way to go, if they should go more with the purist side of baseball, or if they should change some of the rules to make baseball more fun to watch and stuff like that. So this year is probably one of the best years to win if you're the Padres, obviously, but I think mostly because Tatis is still in his rookie contract sort of deal. He hasn't hit his extension yet. So this year he's only making $1.7 million. That's his entire contract, including his signing bonuses and everything like that. And obviously he could probably make a little bit more with incentives and these kinds of things, but this is just his base salary. And in 2022, that goes up to $5.7 million, and the $0.7 million is just his signing bonus getting split up into the rest of his contract. It works out to a little bit over $700,000 a year from his $10 million signing bonus, so he doesn't just get all of that money right away. It's more of a year-to-year type of deal. And then in 2023, that goes up to $7.7 million a year. 2024, $11.7 million. And then in 2025 and 2026 is when Tatis starts making some of the money from this huge deal. In 2025 and 2026, the Padres have Tatis locked up for $20.7 million each year. And then in 2027 and 2028, he's going to be making $25.7 million. And in 2029 through 2034, he's going to be making the remainder of his contract, which works out to about $36.7 million a year. I think that the Padres are in a fantastic spot until I would say the end of 2026. It may be 2027 or 2028, depending on how they are able to structure the rest of the team and their organization for these future seasons. I just think once Tatis starts making the $36 million a year, and granted, when he starts making that, that's 8 years from now, and we have no idea what the baseball free agent market's going to look like. We don't really know what players are going to be making. We don't know anything like that. So the $36.7 million could very well mean that he's just being severely underpaid at that point in time. We don't know how these contracts are going to continue to grow, if they're going to stagnate, or what the deal is. But I will say that Tatis is cashed in. He's making plenty of money. I think that he probably could have gotten more. I also think the Padres maybe overpaid for a little bit because he's only played around 140 baseball games in his career so far, at least regular season, I believe. He hasn't played that much baseball yet, and we all know, anybody who has watched this guy play, everybody is in love with how good he is at baseball. And it's so fun to watch somebody this young just be an absolute superstar. But with that being said, I think that the Padres are definitely in win now mode. I don't love that. I like that the Padres know that they need to win within the next couple of years, and that's why they structured Tatis' contract so he's not making any of his money until he is in his 2029 season. He's not making over $30 million yet, so that way they can still sign pieces, they can trade for pieces without having to necessarily be locked into that huge year-to-year $36 million for just that shortstop. But I think that the Padres are going to be good. I mean, listen to the lineup that they have right now. In their infield, they have Eric Hosmer at first, Jake Cronenworth at second, Fernando Tatis Jr. at short, and Manny Machado at third base. Now, Machado and Tatis might swap positions. Machado has said in the past that he wanted to play shortstop. So we might see them, change positions, or if Tatis has a day off, Manny Machado might go to third base or something like that. But that is probably the best infield in baseball. And Machado and Tatis are locked into that left side for a long time now. With Manny Machado just last season, or the season before, I apologize, on signing his huge $300 million deal. But we also have to look at their outfield, and they have Tommy Pham, Trent Grisham, and Will Myers. And while these names are very popular, these aren't necessarily the players that are going to put seats in the fans, or put fans in the seats. But they are so good. I mean, the National League Gold Glove center fielder Trent Grisham is returning, and you have Will Myers' bat in right field and Tommy Pham's speed in left, and you also have Profar, who could work his way into the mix. He's just one of those utility guys that they have. They also have Brian O'Grady and Ha Segong Kim, who are just some, I wouldn't say necessarily platoon guys, but they're going to be filling in where they're needed. They can go to some different positions and things like that. Just if the Padres need a guy here or there, somebody gets hurt and is out for a couple weeks, they can, they can just put in one of those guys in one of those spots. But listen to this rotation that they have locked up this year. They have Blake Snell, Hugh Darvish, Joe Musgroves, Dinson Lamet, and Chris Paddock. That is their starting rotation. And they are missing, I think, maybe I could see him becoming their ace, but they are missing Mike Clevenger from this lineup as well, or this rotation as well, just because he has Tommy John and he's going to be out for the rest of the year. But this rotation, I would put this rotation up against everybody else, especially if Chris Paddock is your number 5 guy. If you think about it, not too long ago, he was the opening day guy for the Padres. And you also have a swingman with Adrian Morano, and I think that he could be a potential 6-man rotation if the Padres go that way, because you're going from a 60 game season in 2020 to a 162 game season in 2021, and you definitely have to make sure that your pitchers stay healthy. That is probably where I honestly would say that is the most important part of the Padres lineup this year, their roster, just because they need so much help. I don't necessarily mean that they need help. They just, if their starters can get out to a hot start, especially early in this season, a lot of these teams haven't played in a very long time, and it always takes hitters a lot longer to get their timing back, which is why when players get off to a hot start in the beginning of the year, it's always impressive, but they always almost immediately cool off. Now, because of this, I think that you need, I like the idea of the 6-man rotation for the Padres, and their bullpen isn't too shabby either. So if they can just scratch for a couple runs for the first couple weeks of the season, if their bats are cold or whatever, they're gonna be fine. And I love the Padres so much this year. And listen to these names that they have in this bullpen. They have such good names. They have Drew Pomerantz, Emilio Pagan, Austin Adams, Pierce Johnson, Dan Ottavia. And they also have some pitchers that are going to be competing for the final spot, like Jose Castillo and Matt Strahm, who might have their best stuff, but they also have injury concerns, so it'll be interesting to see where the Padres go with that. And their catchers are still pretty good as well. They have Austin Nola and Victor Caratini, and Cartini is going to be the backup. They're probably going to split time, but Cartini is probably also going to be catching most of Hugh Darvish's his bullpens and his games. So we'll probably be looking forward to that. But I think that the Padres are in a fantastic position to win the NL West and definitely make a case if they can stay healthy for the World Series. One thing that the Padres are definitely going to have to consider is both of those guys are viewed as offensive weapons, and if the Padres get into a pinch hitting situation, probably the catcher that isn't playing that day is likely going to get one of those at bats. So do the Padres carry a third catcher? Could it be Luis Campusano, the number 3 prospect in Major League Baseball's pipeline? Could they do that and just in case, just like as a backup scenario? It's just going to be so interesting and fun to watch and see what the Padres end up going with and see what works for them, what doesn't work for them. Are they going to carry a couple extra platoon players just so a few guys can get some rests and they don't have to play every day? Or are they going to carry a couple extra bullpen arms so that way they don't have to rely on their starters going a ton of innings and then, turning it over to a bullpen arm that they don't necessarily trust? Or do you use the early part of the season to find out if your best bet is carrying some more bullpen arms early and using them to get reps and get ready for the middle and end of the season? Or are you going to carry more younger players in the beginning of the season with the bat and get them some reps for get them some reps for the rest of their season in case they're needed to be called up at the end of the year? I am very excited about this season for the Padres. I think that they have such a fun team to watch. You're definitely going to have to pay attention to them, and everybody on this lineup is just fantastic. Now, the Padres might have a little bit of trouble with Dinson Lamet's elbow. Paddock's fastball was a little shaky in 2020, but aside from those two concerns, I think that the Padres have one of the best options, are definitely one of my more favorite teams to come out of the NL this year. And I just don't see much coming out of the American League this season. Now, maybe last year or the year before, I could have maybe seen the Astros or the Indians doing something. Obviously the Yankees are going to be good, but this season, I think the Yankees are in a class all by themselves in the American League. The Rays are there as well, but I don't know if the Rays are going to be what they were last year. Could it be a Miami Heat situation, how the Miami Heat last year were really, really good because they were all playing in a bubble, and then this season they're not doing nearly as well? Could it be a situation like that for the Tampa Bay Rays? Only time is going to be able to tell. But with that being said, I do like the Tatis deal. I think that it is a decent deal for both teams. I think that, or for both parties, I should say, with Tatis getting his money albeit not as much money as I think he probably could have gotten. But at the same time, he got his money and he didn't screw over the organization, and the organization didn't fall for this is one of the best guys in the world, let's give him all of the money that ever existed. No, they worked out a decent deal that was good for both parties, and because they now have Tatis locked up, they're going to be able to be good for quite a while. And at least right now, I don't see a huge weakness for the Padres, just because I think that they're just so well-rounded. Like, right now, I think this is probably the best team in baseball. I don't know if they have the most talent or whatever, but with that being said, I think that the Tatis deal is a good deal. I think it's actually a better deal than a lot of guys get, like the Giancarlo Stanton deal, or even the Mike Trout deal, or the Bryce Harper deal. I think that both of these teams, or both parties, did a very good job at getting what they wanted and helping out the other person other party as much as they could. Now, don't go anywhere. I'm going to be right back in just a few minutes, or just a few seconds, I should say, with the Cleveland Indians name changes, options. What are they going to do? Who should they go with? What names did they go with in the past? And that'll all be in just a moment.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
And welcome back. I know that you guys didn't actually go anywhere, but I'm still trying to figure everything out still. So if you guys have any suggestions or anything, just reach us at Twitter at GSMC Baseball, or at my own personal Twitter. That's Patrick Kenney, KENNEY _. Just tweet me there. Give me some suggestions on maybe some ideas or something of that nature on what you guys would like to hear, or any suggestions on how to make the podcast better. I'm definitely open to those ideas. Now, let's get into the topic that you have all been waiting for. What should the Cleveland Indians change their name to? So they announced last season that they are going to begin phasing out the name and the logo of Chief Wahoo in the Indians out, and this season is going to be the last season without a name, or with that as the Cleveland name. Now, the options that we have they're okay. I like a few of these names. I kind of hate some of these names as well, but let's go in with the names that I don't like. I don't love the potential name of the Blue Sox. Cleveland is blue, but I feel like that's just kind of boring and kind of basic. They also have an option of being named the Crows for some reason. I don't know why. There's also the Cleveland Dobies. Now, the Cleveland Dobies would be the name of the Hall of Famer Larry Doby, who was the American League's first black player. That name, I like the the homage to Larry Doby, but I don't love the name the Cleveland Dobies. So I think I'm going to have to X that one out. And there are also a couple names that are okay, like the Cleveland Fellers. Obviously, they would be named after Bob Feller and the homage to one of the greatest pitchers of all time. And another one is the Cleveland Naps, and that is Nap LaJoie, and he spent a ton of time with Cleveland and was arguably the American League's first superstar. He had that much power. But let's get, and then there's also the Cleveland Great Lakes. Cleveland is obviously right off of Lake Erie, which is a Great Lake. And that one's okay. I don't love it. I don't hate it. But there's also the Cleveland Buckeyes, and I don't hate that name. There is a call for unity within the state of Ohio. Obviously, Ohio is called the Buckeye State because they have Buckeye trees there, and on those trees there's a poisonous nut that comes there that grows on the trees called Buckeyes because they look like a buckeye. And I like that name, but Ohio State is already the Buckeyes, but that name specifically is an homage to Cleveland's Negro League team back when the Negro Leagues were still a thing, and it could be a sort of unifying factor for the state of Ohio, even though Ohio has the Cincinnati Reds as well, but that could be one reason for going with the Buckeyes. Now, here are my three favorite, or two of these are the most popular names. One of them I prefer over the next, but this one I think is a little out of left field, but I absolutely love the idea of calling the Cleveland Indians now the Cleveland Cuyahogas. And the Cuyahogas are, or actually I should say, the county that Cleveland, the city, is in is called Cuyahoga County, and there's also the Cuyahoga River, which famously caught fire and is a pretty well-known joke if you're from the area of Ohio or Michigan, Pennsylvania, Indiana, that whole thing, or that whole area. Everybody kind of knows that the Cuyahoga River caught fire because of how polluted it was at one point in time. But let's get into the two most popular names, or at least the ones that I'm seeing on Twitter, and there are a few other names that aren't great, but like there's one called the Cleveland Hazards or the Cleveland Castles. But I will say, and also the Cleveland Unions and Cleveland Blues. The Cleveland Blues were actually the name of the Indians two times before they were the Indians, so it was the Cleveland Blues, the Cleveland Spiders, and then the Cleveland Indians. Another name is the Cleveland Unions because of how vital of a spot that the Unions used Cleveland for during the Civil War. I don't necessarily love that one, but I don't hate it either. The Blues are okay. It invokes some Union ties from the Civil War. But I'm not super into that name necessarily. Now, one name that is gaining a lot of traction is the Cleveland Rockers, and that's because Cleveland is home to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, so obviously that seems pretty seamless, a sort of a seamless fit. And they could do a whole bunch of, guitar-based things on jerseys or hats, or, they could do a lot of fun graphics and merch items like t-shirts and pullovers, hoodies, hats, whatever, in different shapes with different designs, regarding music and stuff like that. But it was also the name of the Cleveland's WNBA franchise, but Cleveland only had a WNBA franchise from 1997 until 2003. So you could go with that, but one could say that you would be rehashing something that didn't work the first time. But I don't hate that one. One of my favorite songs, I am from Ohio, but one of my favorite songs is Cleveland Rocks by the President of the United States of America, or something of that nature. I apologize if I'm getting the name wrong, but that is absolutely one of my favorite songs just because I love to listen to it. And I'm a huge Browns fan, so every time before a game, I got to listen to that song to get me pumped up to watch the Browns and stuff like that. So the Cleveland Rockers, I don't love calling them that. It just kind of gives me the rocking chair vibes. If you call them the Rockers, I guess. Now Cleveland Rocks are pretty good. But I don't see how you could call a team just Rocks. I mean, the Rockies are pretty cool just because they're in the Colorado Rocky Mountains, but I don't necessarily think that you could... I don't love the idea of calling a team just the Rockers. I feel like that... I don't know. I just don't love that name. For whatever reason. But personally, I am partial to the Cleveland Spiders. And the Cleveland Spiders are I think a great name. And personally, I'm a little impartial. I'm a little partial, I should say, actually, a little biased. Just because I am Twitter friends with somebody who is behind the movement of getting the Cleveland Indians to change their name to the Spiders, and I typically like that name. But it was Cy Young actually played for the Cleveland Spiders. Which is a pretty interesting fact that was who Cy Young at least at first started to play for before a couple of name changes with Cleveland. It was also when the franchise was in the National League for a little bit. But I do think that the Cleveland Spiders are probably the best name. I kind of like the logo that they have there. It's a logo with the spiders, and it's got two claws coming out right outside of his face, like on the sides. Two claws behind that, also facing upwards. One larger legs going downward, another one going downward as well, and then instead of the body being a spider body, it's the Cleveland C, and I think that looks actually pretty nice. I know I obviously didn't describe it very well, but I think that the Spiders are an interesting name. I think that it is sort of a nice idea to go back to what it was before the name became, or before the organization changed the name to something that is pretty offensive to some people. And I think that, I mean, with the besides the University of Richmond, Spiders is a pretty underused name, and I don't necessarily think that there's I don't know why it's not a big used name. I guess it's just not as exciting as like the Spartans or Titans or Warriors or something like that. But I do think that the Cleveland Spiders is just it's just fun. It's different. It's light. People hate spiders. I know I do, and so if you have a team name like the Spiders, I mean, nobody really actually cares what a team is necessarily called. Like, I'm a fan of a team called the Cleveland Browns. Like, how boring of a name is that? So, but you still love the team anyway. So for Cleveland fans, I'm partial to the Cleveland Spiders just because I like the name. I think it's a change of pace. I think it's lighthearted, and I think that the Cleveland organization can have a lot of fun with that name. I think they can also have a lot of fun with Rockers, and Cuyahogas are a pretty good name too. Now, nobody is in this audience is actually going to know how to spell Cuyahoga, but it's because it's pretty hard actually to spell if you think about it. But it's Cuyahhogas, and that's how you spell Cuyahoga. But I like those names. The Naps are also a pretty pretty popular name as well. But I think right now a lot of fans are split between Spiders and Rockers, and I think right now the Rockers are probably winning, at least from what I'm seeing from people and fans on Twitter and things like that. I've also seen some people calling for the Braves to get to change their name. I don't know if they necessarily need to change their name, but there's no doubt that the Cleveland Indians name needs to be changed. It's offensive to Native people in the area, and there's been a movement for a very long time to try and get the Cleveland Indians to change their name. And honestly, I think it boils down to a little bit of a respect thing, but at the same time, I am a Cleveland Indian fan, and I try to take my bias out as much as I can. When I'm talking about baseball and things like that, but I think it's time for a change, and I think that what the Cleveland Baseball Organization did by allowing everyone time to get over the fact that the name is changing, regardless of how they feel about it, I think that was a smart move by the Cleveland Baseball Organization, and ultimately I think that it's time for a name change either way. I mean, teams stick with these nicknames for a very long time, and sometimes it just isn't worth what it's just not worth the pain and the anger that it causes some people if their name is offensive. So yeah, guys, just reach out to me on Twitter, stuff like that. But let me know what y'all think. Mention us in a review on Apple if you're listening on Apple. If you're listening on or watching on YouTube, give us a comment. I'll be sure to try and check those out, see if I can get any ideas on what y'all think. Reach out to us on Twitter at GSMC Baseball, or my own Twitter, Patrick Kenny _. Just let us know what you guys think that Cleveland should change their name to. Give us ideas on what else you might want to hear in the future. If you want a segment on a specific team, a couple prospects who you think should get signed next, or whatever you guys think would be fun to listen to on the podcast, and I'll see what I can do to get it done and things like that. But before we go, I am going to say that I think the Cleveland Spiders would be a fantastic name for a baseball team. I think that I don't think that they're the other names that are listed, except with the exception of maybe the Cuyahogas. I don't really like necessarily any of these other names. I think that the Blue Sox are, I think it's just boring and lazy. I think the Fellers, I don't like that name very much. And I don't like the Crows at all. The Rockers are okay. But I think that the best name for the Cleveland Indians to change their name to is probably the Cleveland Spiders. But I just want to give you guys a thank you for listening. If you made it this far, once again, reach out to us on all of our social medias, Facebooks. Give us reviews on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts. I've been Patrick Kenny. Thank you guys for listening.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.